The clatter of porcelain against tile echoed through the upscale restaurant, silencing every conversation around us. The plate of pasta, meant to be my birthday dinner, lay in shattered pieces on the floor. Red sauce splattered across my shoes like bloodstains. I sat frozen in my seat, blinking away the sting in my eyes as my daughter-in-law, Tessa, stood over me with a sneer. "You should have never come," she hissed, loud enough for half the room to hear. I turned to my son, Eric, desperate for anything that resembled defense. He avoided my gaze, eyes glued to his napkin like a child caught between parents. "Mom, maybe you should go," he mumbled. I was 61 years old and had never felt so humiliated. Just hours earlier, I had stood in front of my mirror, carefully choosing my favorite navy blue dress, the one my late husband had loved. I'd even clipped on the pearl earrings he gave me for our 25th anniversary. It had been years since Eric called to invite me anywhere, and when he said they wanted to celebrate my birthday, I had dared to hope. I brought a small gift, wrapped in pink paper, a book of fairy tales for my granddaughter Lily. I brought a photo album too, filled with pictures of Eric as a boy. I had imagined us flipping through it after dessert, laughing together like we used to. Foolish me. From the moment I sat down, Tessa barely looked up from her phone. Eric kept checking his watch. I asked about the kids. Lily and James and Tessa shot back, "They're fine. No warmth, no interest." When I offered the gift, she didn't even touch it. "We already told you, Marion. Lily has too many toys. She doesn't need your trinkets." I tried to stay composed, but when she started talking about how I had ruined Eric's childhood and how he needed therapy because of me, I felt my heart crack. And then the plate hit the floor. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling, my voice low but firm. "I'm sorry to have ruined your evening." With what dignity I had left, I walked out of Bellamore's, the sound of broken china still ringing in my ears. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my car and wept. But somewhere deep inside that pain, something shifted. And that's where this story begins. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in Robert's old recliner, wrapped in a shawl he once bought me for Christmas, staring at nothing while memories looped through my mind like a movie on repeat. I thought about Eric's first steps across the living room floor, his school recitals, the nights he fell asleep in my lap after his father died. Robert passed from pancreatic cancer when Eric was just 12. From that moment on, it was just the two of us. I worked 3 jobs to keep the house, to pay for Eric's education, to give him a chance at something better. I never dated again, never traveled. Every decision I made, I filtered through the question, will this be good for Eric? And somewhere along the way, I lost him. It hadn't always been this bad. After he married Tessa, things slowly changed. Phone calls grew shorter. Holidays became optional. I chalked it up to him building a life. I understood boundaries, I tried to respect them. But the distance became more than just physical, it was emotional, cold. I was allowed into their lives only on their terms, polished, occasional, scripted. And lately, not at all. Still, I kept sending cards on birthdays. Still left messages checking in. Still mailed gifts for the grandkids, even when I never saw them use them. I told myself it was just a season. That one day Eric would remember who I had been for him. That dinner, though it broke something open. I didn't recognize my son anymore, and worse, I wasn't sure he recognized me either. In that sleepless haze, I began to wonder, had I really been such a terrible mother? Was Tessa right? Had I smothered him after Robert died? Had I clung too tightly? But even as doubt swirled, another voice whispered underneath it all, one I hadn't heard in years. It said, "No, you gave everything. You were more than enough. But by morning, something had changed. I stood up, made coffee, and pulled out a drawer that had remained locked for years. Inside was a card, an old business card, edges yellowed with time. The name was simple. Richard Calloway, attorney at law. A family friend. One of the few people who remembered Robert as more than just a builder. I picked up the phone. "Richard," I said when he answered, my voice surprisingly steady, "It's Marion Blake. I think I'm ready to tell you everything." 3 days after the restaurant, I sat across from Richard Calloway in his quiet office, surrounded by walnut bookshelves and framed degrees. He looked up from the stack of documents I'd handed him, eyebrows raised above his glasses. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Marion?" "I've never been more certain," I replied. Richard and I went back decades. He had drawn up the very first papers for Robert's company, Blake Sons Construction. After Robert died, I had quietly stepped into the business side, not just to honor his legacy, but to survive. I kept the company going, then growing, learning contracts, managing budgets, making decisions behind the scenes. To the outside world, Robert had built the empire. After his passing, people assumed the business died with him. I let them believe that. In truth, Blake's sons became more successful in the decade following his death than in all the years before. I just didn't put my name on the door. I chose to live simply. I kept the house Robert and I bought in our 30s. I drove a modest car shopped with coupons, and let my neighbors believe I was just another retiree living on a small pension. It was easier that way, less explaining, less attention. What Eric never knew, what I never told anyone, was that I was still the owner of the company. The assets, the trusts, the accounts. I had power I never used until now. One of those assets was the house Eric and Tessa lived in. Years ago, when Eric had mentioned they were looking to buy in a better school district, he was discouraged by the market prices. "We're going to wait," he said. "We're not ready financially." "Let me help," I had offered. "No, Mom," he replied quickly. "We don't need your money." So I stepped back. And then I stepped in, quietly. I purchased the house myself under a holding company attached to Blake's sons. Then, I arranged a private sale on paper only. Eric believed he bought the house at an excellent price from a motivated seller. In truth, every mortgage payment they sent went into a trust I'd set up for my grandchildren's future education. It was all perfectly legal, but layered in silence. And Tessa's platinum credit card. That had been mine too. A secondary account I covered every month. She believed it was Eric's gift to her. In reality, Eric didn't know about it at all. Every facial she had, every handbag, every $1,000 retreat in Napa, all of it on me. "Let me get this straight," Richard said, flipping through the pages. "You still hold the deed to their home. You've been subsidizing their lifestyle. And they think you're just what? Some lonely old woman?" "Exactly," I said, finally looking him in the eye. "But now I'm done hiding." He sat back slowly, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "This is going to shake their entire world." "I'm counting on it," I said softly. On Monday morning, Tessa received the first letter. It came via courier official, sealed and direct. Inside was a formal notice. The credit card she had been using was now frozen. The account, which she believed was funded by a private line of credit from Eric, had in fact been linked to a trust I controlled. And that trust no longer permitted her access. I was in the kitchen folding dish towels when my phone rang. Eric's name flashed on the screen. I answered calmly. "Hello, Eric." "Mom, what the hell is going on?" he snapped. I assumed Tessa received the letter. She said her card was declined at Nordstrom in front of everyone. And then, this letter shows up saying you've been paying her bills for years, that you froze the account. "That's correct." There was a long pause. I let the silence stretch until Eric asked, quieter this time, "Is it true?" "Yes," I said, "and there's more we need to talk about. The house, for one." "My house." "It's not yours, Eric. It never was. I still hold the deed. You've been paying into a trust for your children, not a mortgage. I arranged it so you wouldn't have to feel like you owed me." Another beat of silence. "Then you're making this up." "I have the paperwork, the contracts, the bank statements. Come by the house. Bring Tessa if you'd like. I'll show you everything." He didn't say goodbye. He just hung up. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. Eric stepped inside without a word. His face was tight, shoulders tense. He walked straight to the dining room where I had already laid everything out. Property deed, mortgage records, credit card statements, trust documents, tax filings. Everything. "Where did you even get these?" he asked, flipping through the pages. "I've had them for years." Tessa arrived 15 minutes later, fuming. She barged into the room, designer bag swinging off her shoulder like armor. "This is absurd," she hissed. "You're trying to control us." "No, Tessa," I said, steady as stone. "I'm finally telling the truth." Eric looked from me to her, confusion darkening his face. He held the folder like it might burn him. "I don't understand. Why would you keep all this from us?" "Because you said you didn't want my help," I said, voice soft but unwavering. "But you needed it. So I gave it quietly. And now I won't anymore." That was the moment everything shifted. Eric stood in the middle of my dining room, flipping page after page, his brow furrowed deeper with each document. So the silence between the three of us grew thick. "You never let me see any of this," he said finally. his voice hollow. You never asked, I replied gently, and I didn't want to make you feel small. I thought I was preserving your pride. Tessa scoffed from the other side of the room. You're unbelievable. You wait until now until I'm publicly embarrassed to pull this. This is revenge. This is emotional manipulation. No, Tessa, I said, locking eyes with her. This is clarity. It's what you've avoided for years. Eric turned to her. Is any of this true? That this credit card was hers? That our house was never actually ours? Her arms folded, her voice sharp. She's twisting everything. She's always been jealous of me. You know that. But Eric didn't answer. He reached for another folder on the table, one I hadn't touched. These bank statements, he said, holding them up, I found them yesterday when I went looking for our financial records. They don't match anything you've shown me before. Tessa's face blanched. Private wire transfers, Eric continued, to a bank in the Bahamas. Some of them as high as $15,000. I can explain, she stammered. You'd better, Eric said, voice rising, because it sure looks like you've been siphoning money from our joint accounts. I stayed silent, letting the truth settle. You knew about this, he asked me suddenly. No, I said, but I suspected something wasn't right. That's why I kept everything separate. Eric looked like a man unraveling, confused, betrayed, exhausted. Tessa's face hardened. She's trying to destroy us, she barked. Can't you see that? She wants to drive a wedge between us because she can't stand that you love me more than her. I don't want to be in competition, I said, calmly. I never did. Eric stared at the floor, one hand pressed against his temple. You told me she refused to come to Lily's baptism. I was never invited, I said. You told me she mocked your parenting at Thanksgiving. I wasn't even there. Eric's breath caught. And for the first time in years, I saw it. He was finally starting to question the version of me Tessa had painted for him. The illusion was breaking. Eric sat down slowly, as if the weight of the past decade had finally caught up to him. He didn't say anything at first, just stared down at the folder in his hands, flipping back and forth between the pages, between truth and everything he used to believe. I was so blind, he whispered. I thought we were fine, that we were building something real. Tessa stood stiff beside the door, her arms crossed. This is ridiculous, she muttered. I'm not going to sit here and be accused like a criminal. She turned to Eric. Are you coming or not? He didn't move, didn't even glance at her. Her voice sharpened. If you stay here, Eric, don't bother coming home. The ultimatum landed like a slap in the face. Eric looked up slowly at her, then at me. I need time, he said, to think, to figure out what's real and what's not. Tessa stormed out, slamming the door so hard the window rattled. For a long moment, the house was silent again. Eric and I remained there at the table, surrounded by papers and the jagged edges of our broken understanding. I never wanted it to come to this, I said, my voice barely audible. And why now? Because love means telling the truth, I replied, even when it hurts. He didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. That night, he didn't stay long, said he needed space to process everything. I understood. His world had shifted underneath him. The foundation he'd built his marriage on had cracked open, and all the rot was spilling out. In the days that followed, the house felt quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not empty, not aching, just waiting. Then, one morning, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Eric with Lily and James beside him, backpacks slung over their tiny shoulders. Can we stay? He asked. Just until I figure things out. I knelt down to the children, forcing a smile through the swell in my chest. Of course, I said. This is your home too. And just like that, the silence was broken by the sound of running feet, giggles echoing through the hallway, and a little girl calling, Grandma, look what I drew. It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning. Life didn't transform overnight, but it shifted in ways that mattered. The mornings now began with the scent of cinnamon toast and the sound of tiny feet racing through the hallway. Lily loved to help crack the eggs for breakfast, though half of it usually ended up on the counter. James insisted on feeding the cat, even though we didn't have one. We all pretended we did. Eric took a leave of absence from his firm. He spent the afternoons job hunting online, helping with homework, and driving the kids to soccer and ballet. In the evenings, we'd sit on the porch together while they played in the yard, the soft clink of wind chimes above us. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, he looked over at me. "I don't know how you did it," he said, raising me alone, running a business, still managing to be kind. I smiled, sipping my tea, 1 minute at a time. Some days, that's all I had. And slowly, I began reclaiming pieces of myself. I called Richard the next day. "I want to go public," I told him. "No more hiding behind Robert's name." "You're sure?" "I'm ready." A week later, the announcement made headlines across the business community. Marion Blake, widow behind Blake's Sons, revealed as CEO. Some were surprised, some were impressed, a few even apologized for having underestimated me. But none of that mattered as much as the feeling in my chest when I stepped into the office that Monday morning, no longer a shadow, but a leader. Later that week, I called my old friend Helen, who had long since retired to Santa Rosa. "I'm hosting a dinner," I said, small, just friends. "You?" she laughed. "Hosting again? I thought you'd sworn off entertaining for life." Life's too short to wait for someone else to make the first move. That Saturday, my dining room was lit by candles and laughter. Friends gathered around a warm table, wine glasses clinking, music floating through the air. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was observing life from the outside. I was in it. Living it. And slowly, piece by piece, I was becoming whole again. The divorce moved forward faster than expected. Tessa, after weeks of threats and legal posturing, abruptly dropped the custody fight. Eric walked into the kitchen one morning holding an envelope from her lawyer. Inside was a signed agreement. She would relinquish full custody of the children in exchange for a lump sum payment and the promise that Eric wouldn't press charges for financial misconduct. "She's been living with him," Eric said quietly, handing me a grainy photo of Tessa boarding a plane with a man I didn't recognize. Miami, apparently. She missed 3 court dates. She's been out of state for a month. I sat down, absorbing the reality. She'd abandoned her children. "She says she wants to start fresh," he added bitterly. "Said she was never meant to be a mother." And just like that, the chapter closed. Eric sold the old house and placed the proceeds into a trust for Lily and James. No hesitation. No second thoughts. "This money should be for them," he told me. "Their future, not mine. I'll rebuild on my own terms." I was proud of him, not just because he'd finally seen the truth, but because he was doing something with it, turning pain into purpose. One evening, while the kids played in the yard, Eric and I sat on the back steps with mugs of cocoa warming our hands. "I've been thinking," he said, "maybe it's time we find a new place. Not just for me and the kids. For all of us." I looked at him, surprised. "You mean you want us to live together?" He nodded slowly. "We've spent enough years apart. It's time we build something new. Together." Tears welled in my eyes, but this time they were warm, hopeful. "Yes," I whispered. "Let's start over. As a family." 6 months later, we stood in the foyer of our new home, a light-filled, 2-story craftsman with wide porches and a backyard big enough for Lily and James to run wild. Eric had insisted on splitting the cost, his income from consulting now stable. "It's not about money anymore," he said. "It's about partnership. You and me, equal parts of this family." I'd never felt prouder. That same week, I finalized my new will. Everything I owned, my shares in Blake's Sons, my savings, even the proceeds from the sale of my old home, was now set to go equally to Eric and my grandchildren. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but from clarity. From peace. One night, after the kids had gone to sleep, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the gentle clink of the wind chime David had given me as a housewarming gift. The stars were bright above, the kind of sky Robert used to love staring at on quiet nights like this. I whispered into the breeze, "I think you'd be proud." Then my phone buzzed, a text from Martha. "How's the new place?" I typed back. "It finally feels like home." Her reply came quick. "Of course it does. Home isn't a place. It's who you share it with." She was right. For years, I tried to hold my family together through silent sacrifices and quiet support, believing love meant staying in the background. But real love stands tall, speaks truth, and builds something honest even if it has to start from the ashes. If you've ever found yourself erased or discarded by people you once gave everything to, know this: you are not alone. Leave a comment, share your story. I'm listening. And if this story moved you even a little, like, share, and subscribe. Someone out there might need this reminder. It's never too late to begin again.